Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon, and we're going to talk about Kneon Genesis Evangelion, one of my all-time favorite anime, and I know I get a lot of crap for that because people are like, it's really overrated. And yeah, you know, it is. I'm going to be honest. It's an overrated anime. It hasn't held up as well as, I thought it would in light of newer shows, but for the time, in the mid-90s, it was pretty groundbreaking. It was crazy popular. It still is crazy popular from a merchandising standpoint. It's one of the few anime that I have a huge soft spot for the English dub of, the original ADV English dub of, because it is the first anime series that I can recall buying as a teenager in its entirety on VHS, because I'm old. But I do remember, the series very well. I was a little upset by the Netflix translation. They changed a lot of things. I didn't think the voice actors, no offense to them, but I don't think that they quite did as good of a job with the material as they did over at ADV. So that's my disclaimer here, I guess, before we get into the video. Now, the big news is that Hideaki Anno, who is the creator of Evangelion, and he's kind of crazy a little bit, but he's kind of a mad genius, right? He does some weird stuff. He has severed all ties with Gainax. He's severed all ties with Gainax, and he's actually denouncing the current regime over at Gainax for, well, some alleged inappropriate behavior going on right now over there by the current chief. Okay, so this is a big deal because Gainax was synonymous with Evangelion. Gainax still is synonymous with Evangelion, even though it's been many years, and the current movies are, I don't know if they're co-produced or what, by Anno's own studio Kara. I believe it's Studio Kara. But he went on a bender and basically denounced Gainax, talked about the working conditions over there, talked about the financial situation over there, and it's kind of, weird to see this because, like I said, Evangelion in my mind has always been completely intertwined with Studio Gainax, and it was definitely their flagship product. And I think the biggest complaint that he had was it was their flagship product and he wasn't getting enough money from it, because we know that even years after the anime has debuted, that toys and merchandise and dating sims and manga of Evangelion are still being produced in copious amounts, and the franchise is still generating a lot of money. Whether or not Anno is seeing that, who knows. So we're going to talk about that, this split from Gainax, and what that means for Evangelion going forward. Personally, I think once they get done with the movies, they're probably done with it. Hopefully, leave it alone, let it die. It belongs in the mid-90s, but I do still have a soft spot for it. So before we get into the video anymore, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We're about 86,000 subs, hoping for 100,000 soon. Really appreciate it, guys. We do talk about pop culture. We talk about animation, we talk about anime, we talk about Star Wars, we talk about Disney, pretty much whatever interests us that day we talk about. So it is a pretty eclectic channel, but we do have opinions. So sometimes those opinions get us in trouble. Oh well, watch another channel, I guess. So, all right. So I think Crunchyroll actually broke this, and I found a couple different sources, one of them being a Mexican site, I think, or Venezuelan. I don't know. But, I had to run it through the translator here. Now, of course, this isn't making major headlines because nobody outside the anime community here in the US, here in the English-speaking world, cares about it, but it is a big deal. So let's go to the Crunchyroll version first. Anno denounces links between him and arrested Gainax president, discusses past with Anime Studio. The director of Evangelion wrote a heartbroken post, and we're gonna look at that in poorly translated English. Wrote a heartbroken post about the severed links between him and his former studio. Yeah, like I said, Gainax was always synonymous with Anno. Going back to Nadia, again, another one of my favorite anime of all time. And Nadia is basically Shinji and Drag Fight Me. Anyway, on the morning of December 30th, Evangelion director and animation studio Kara founder Hideaki Anno released a lengthy and scathing op-ed about the current state of the anime studio that first produced the original Neon Genesis Evangelion TV anime, Gainax. Anno spent most of his formative years as an anime director at Gainax, a studio he helped co-found with his fellow Osaka University art students, directing series such as Nadia, Kari Kano, which is also good, and Cutie Honey. On December 5th, the current president of Gainax was arrested on semi-forced incident assault charges against a teenager who was a student at Gainax, at the Gainax International Voice and Acting Studio. I'm going to put a link to more information on that. I don't want to talk about that too much in this video, obviously, because, you know, we'll get demonetized, but it's, you know, it is what it is. When the news broke, many worldwide media outlets used Evangelion as an example of works produced at Gainax, going so far as to use the anime title in headlines. Due to this, Kara released a statement commenting on the matter, as well as distancing the anime studio and property from Gainax, saying Kara and its employees had no acquaintance with or relation to the suspect. Anno, with a heavy heart, posted a personal op-ed on the subject on Japanese business site Diamond Online, discussing the current situation as well as his past with Gainax and the troubles he had with the veteran animation studio. From the mid-2000s, Anno started out the piece by thanking the victims for bringing the abuses by Maki to light, and he's disappointed that the Gainax he helped found was reported about in this way, in regards to a person that had no background or familiarity with the works of Anno's Gainax. So we're talking about a new person that came in, and this happens a lot. And, you know, again, they're trying to tie this person's actions to Evangelion, which was years ago, and this person was not associated with Evangelion in any way, as I understand it. But again, Gainax and Evangelion for the longest time were pretty interchangeable. So, you know, you want to grab the headlines, you're gonna you know, invoke the name of Eva to do that, because it still is relevant, at least from a merchandising standpoint, right? So Anno wrote that there is no one involved in the production of Evangelion at Gainax today. And the person arrested was someone who joined Gainax only a few years ago and has never been involved in Evangelion. Later in the article, Anno explains that the copyright for Evangelion was moved from Gainax, who took care of the licensing and business side of the franchise due to the lack of manpower at Kara in the early days of the studio, to Kara after a monetary dispute that resulted in Kara suing its former business partner for unpaid royalties and a loan from Anno to keep Gainax afloat. So Anno had to float them some money. He had to float them some money just to keep them going, and they brought this new guy in, and he did some dirty deeds. Kara won the settlement, and ever since, Kara was in charge of everything related to Evangelion. As the president of Kara, Anno wrote that he has a responsibility to protect his work and the staff as both a representative of Kara and as the original creator of Evangelion, to make sure this franchise is not associated with Gainax anymore. But the thing is that it is pretty much interchangeable. I mean, that would be almost like if the screenwriter of Frozen decided to take Frozen away from Disney, people are still going to associate Frozen with Disney from now until the end of time. And it's kind of the same with Gainax. I mean, it was so interchangeable. This was Anno's studio, you know, so it's going to be a hard thing to break. But he had to do this. He had to come out and say, hey, we're not associated with these guys anymore. He asked the media to refrain from using Gainax and Evangelion in headlines together to alleviate the confusion between himself and Kara and Maki and the current incarnation of Gainax. The rest of the op-ed, which we're going to take a look at here, spanned 8 pages, detailed Anno's history with the studio he helped found and the many chances he gave to those at Gainax, which he considered friends before they stopped repayments and tried to hide assets and debts in other companies. This happens in entertainment, in the creative industries all the time. You hear about situations with anime. You hear about situations with animation. You hear about comic books. You hear about with comic books all the time. You hear about with movies. You hear about Hollywood accounting. I think David Prowse said once that he had never received a single royalty check from Return of the Jedi because of Hollywood accounting. That they said the movie was never profitable. And Return of the Jedi was one of the biggest blockbusters of the 1980s, but he never got his royalty checks. You know, this is very normal. And, you know, unfortunately, as a creative person, it becomes more and more lucrative, I think, to just do your own thing and be 100% in charge of your own creations and not have third parties handle your money. The problem is that it's not realistic from a distribution standpoint to do that. If you want your project to get out there in a major way and be on TV and all of that, you probably need some middlemen and middle women to make that possible. But unfortunately, when you do that, you run the risk of people coming in and handling your money and feeding you a line of bullshit and telling you it's making less money than it actually is or whatever. So yeah, make sure, if you're going to do any kind of animation or comics work or whatever, graphic novels, if you're not self-publishing, you're not doing it yourself on YouTube, make sure you have a damn good agent or somebody working for you or with you, an attorney, to get this stuff sorted out, because it can be very, very complicated. And when you're dealing with large studios, they can hide money pretty well. That's my little rant. So apparently he owed, Anno loaned Gainax almost $1 million to keep the studio in business in 2014. Anno said that Yamaga was a friend of mine from school, and I wanted to support a struggling company as a member of the animation industry. It was also a way of giving back to a company that looked after me for such a long time. Gainax even sold off the rights to Gunbuster in 2014, an anime series that was the directorial debut of Anno in 1989. I like Gunbuster. Without informing him after Anno made an offer to buy the rights for it and Fooly Cooly to help out the studio. Gainax still owes money to Kara to this day. So he even dived into the reasoning behind moving Evangelion from Gainax to his own independent company. I wondered about that when they were bringing Evangelion back, doing the reboot, the remake, the rebuild, whatever you want to call it, the sequel, the prequel, the reimagining. I still think it's a sequel. He moved it to his own independent company. I wondered why he did that. According to the director, Kneon Genesis Evangelion was planned not to be made at Gainax in the early 90s due to worries that the studio couldn't handle the workload. But after speaking to the president of Gainax at the time, they both decided to use the talent that was in the studio. So Gainax partnered with Tatsunoko Production to produce Evangelion. Yeah, but you don't hear much about that. You hear about Gainax. So beyond the discrepancies in pay, Anno felt like he wasn't being heard inside Gainax and felt no sense in continuing to be a director at the studio. Anno thought it would be better for the stagnant anime industry and himself if he made the Evangelion films somewhere else other than Gainax. So he couldn't find another studio to work with that he could trust enough, and formed Kara to control the cost of production, to provide adequate salaries, and to give back to those who worked hard. Evangelion 1.0 went on to make 2 billion yen, 18.8 million, during its run in 2007. Pretty good for an anime movie. So far, the film franchise has earned more than 11.3 billion, 141 million, the Japanese box office, completely eclipsing that of the original TV series. So yeah, the fourth film is coming, 3.0 plus 1.0, whatever, 4.44, whatever they're going to call it. The fourth movie is coming out in Japan this year. Next year. 2020, and is directed by Anno at Kara with no involvement by Gainax or its former subsidiaries. Now, I think the first movie, I had to look this up, but I'm pretty sure Gainax was involved with the first one. It said it was produced and co-distributed by Studio Kara in partnership with Gainax. So, but Gainax is not involved at all. So he is completely split. Evangelion is completely split from Gainax at this point, and this is actually huge news. And I'm surprised, given all the troubles that he's had, that this hasn't happened sooner. I'm surprised it took this to really, have Anno come out and say what he said. But I'm gonna put a link to his original blog post on Diamond Online. And here's a little bit of what he said. Again, he reiterated the person that was arrested was the one who came to Gainax just a few years ago and has never been involved at all in Evangelion. There's nobody involved in the production of Evangelion at Gainax today. So it might have been the first movie. Evangelion is being produced by Color Inc., where I am the CEO. That would be Kara. Bad translation. The headline, Eva production company president arrested, could even be interpreted as arresting me. This is why he's salty. Because, yeah, they're basically saying the president of the company that produces Evangelion, not making a difference between the TV series of the 90s and the current movies, was arrested. These reports gave many a misunderstanding as if the case had something to do with Evangelion or me. On behalf of creators, I'd like to strongly protest against such a way of reporting which aims at misleading, such as, it's true that Gainax once made Eva, so is not alive. Welcome to current year, Mr. Anno. Welcome to current year, where the media picks the most tantalizing headline to run with. So yeah, he's not real happy about that. But I'm going to put links to the original. It is in Japanese. I had to use Google Translate. And so it's going to be really wonky in English, but you get the picture. You get the picture. But it is big news because Newsweek is talking about Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0. That's 4.0 or 4.44, I think, probably when it comes out. It is coming out in Japan 2020. I'm guessing by the end of the year here in the US. And I am hedging my bets. It's still a sequel to the original anime. That's my personal opinion, but we'll see. The third movie definitely deviated pretty far from the anime, and the fourth one is probably going to deviate even more, and I have to wonder how whacked it's going to be, because the end of Evangelion was pretty nuts, pretty bonkers. But there we go. So Evangelion no longer with Gainax. We're going to wrap this one up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later. Thinking about printing your own comic books, graphic novel, or manga? We recommend our friends over at PrintNinja. We've been using PrintNinja as long as they've been printing comics, and both the quality and price is excellent. Mention CLOWNFISH TV and get an additional 5% overrun of your book order quantity printed for free. For free! That's free books, people. Just mention this offer on the phone or in the additional information box on the quote request form. That's printninja.com, or click on the link in the description below. Hey guys, thanks for watching CLOWNFISH TV. Please consider supporting the channel. Go to clownfishsupport.com. That's clownfishsupport.com. And if you want to join our community, go to clownfishtalk.com. That's clownfishtalk.com. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We will talk to you next time.